He thought it was going to be the worst shift of his life when he saw that receipt. Zero. A big, fat zero written on the tip line. From the billionaire everyone said was famous for his generosity. No cash on the table. No apology scribbled next to the signature. Just an empty line, a signed bill, and a plate resting just slightly off-center, like someone had moved it on purpose. What the waiter didn't know yet, what he couldn't possibly imagine in that moment, was that there was something hidden under that plate. Something that would drag a corrupt system into the light. Something that would change his life, his son's future, and the fate of everyone working in that restaurant. But to understand how a $0 tip and a folded note turned into a storm, we have to rewind. Daniel Reyes was used to bad days. He was 32, a waiter in an upscale downtown restaurant called the Meridian, and a single dad to an 8-year-old boy named Leo. If you've ever worked in service, you already know his reality. Sore feet, forced smiles, and living off the kindness of strangers, one tip at a time. He woke up every morning before sunrise. The alarm went off at 5:15 a.m. He'd roll over in the small one-bedroom apartment he shared with his son, squint at the cracked phone screen, and take a second to remember why he was doing this. Then he'd turn his head. On the other side of the room, under a blanket decorated with tiny rockets and planets, Leo slept with one arm around a threadbare stuffed dinosaur. Sometimes he kicked the blanket off and mumbled in his sleep. Sometimes he coughed, the rough kind of cough that always made Daniel's heart jump a little. That cough was the reason he worked double shifts. It was the reason he said yes when his manager said, "You can stay late, right?" It was the reason he never complained when customers snapped their fingers or called him "Hey, you" instead of using his name. Leo had asthma, and the inhalers, doctor visits, and emergency trips when things got bad were not cheap. Every morning, Daniel would sit on the edge of his mattress, watch his son breathe for a moment, and whisper the same quiet promise. "I'll figure it out, buddy. I'll give you more than this. I swear." Then he'd get up, boil water, make instant coffee, and pack Leo's lunch, peanut butter sandwich, an apple if they had one, and a note with a dumb doodle to make him smile. He'd wake Leo, walk him to the bus, and then head to the Meridian. The Meridian wasn't just any restaurant. It was one of those places people posted on Instagram. Dim gold lighting, marble bar, floor-to-ceiling windows showing off the city skyline, plates that look more like art than food. This was the kind of spot where people celebrated promotions, anniversaries, and just because it's Thursday and we're rich dinners. The kind of place where a single tip could cover a week's groceries. Or not. Inside that world, Daniel had his people. There was Mia, a waitress with bright red nail polish and a sharper tongue than the steak knives. She'd been there longer than almost anyone and could balance 3 plates on each arm without breaking a sweat. "Morning, single dad hero," she'd tease, tying her apron. "How's the tiny dictator?" Demanding, Daniel would say. "He wants new sneakers that don't squeak when he walks." She'd laugh, and it made the hard edges of the job just a little softer. In the kitchen, there was Rosa, the dishwasher, who treated everyone under 30 like they were her babies. She'd sneak extra bread rolls to Daniel at the end of the night. "For the boy," she'd say, pressing a warm paper bag into his hands. "He needs to grow big and strong, not just smart like his papa." And then there was Carl, the floor manager. Carl had perfect hair, perfect suits, and a perfectly practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. He wore a tiny earpiece like he was running a spy operation instead of a dining room. "Uniform, Daniel," he'd say, straightening his tie without asking. "Customers don't tip people who look tired." Daniel would nod and swallow the urge to say, "Customers also don't tip when you add surprise fees to the bill." But he didn't, because he couldn't afford to lose this job. He'd lost enough already. His ex, Rachel, had left when Leo was 3. The pressure, the money, the constant stress. One day she packed a bag and said she was going to find herself. The only thing she left behind was a set of signed papers giving Daniel full custody and a shelf of old novels. He'd signed 2, with a shaking hand and a forced smile. "It's okay," he'd told himself. "Is all that matters." So that was Daniel's world, a small apartment, a fragile boy, and a city that didn't even know his name. Just another waiter in a black apron, carrying trays and hopes that felt way too heavy. And then the rumor started. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Carl called a quick staff meeting on the floor. Everyone gathered around the host stand. Servers, bussers, runners, the hostess with the impossibly high heels, and Rosa peeking out from the kitchen door with wet hands. Carl clapped once. "Listen up, people. We've got a VIP tonight. Big money. Big eyes on us." Mia crossed her arms. "Who is it this time?" "Another influencer with a ring light." Carl smirked. "No. Bigger. Derek Mercer." A low whistle went around the group. You might have heard that name too. Derek Mercer, the tech billionaire. Founder of a company that went from a garage startup to a global empire. People made YouTube videos about his routines. News outlets argued about whether he was a genius or just lucky. Some employees said he was the best boss they'd ever had. Others whispered stories about ruthless decisions, layoffs, and hostile takeovers. But one thing everybody agreed on: he had money. Enough to buy the building, the city block, maybe the entire chain the Meridian belonged to. And he had a reputation. People shared stories online about him tipping waiters $10,000, buying cars for valets, handing out bonuses to hotel staff. He was like a walking lottery ticket. Mia nudged Daniel with her elbow. "You get him, and Leo's wearing designer sneakers by Friday." "Yeah," another server joked. "Ask your son what color Lamborghini he wants." Carl checked his tablet. "Actually, the host assigned the table to." He stopped, frowned, then looked right at Daniel. "To you." The room turned. "Me." Daniel blinked. "Are you sure?" "I don't make mistakes," Carl said sharply. "He requested someone who's worked here for more than a year." "That's you. Don't blow it." Everyone started talking at once. "Dude, you're set. Remember me when you're rich. Bring me back a slice of that billionaire luck." Daniel laughed with them, but inside, something tight twisted in his chest. He thought of unpaid medical bills, the email from the school about the field trip he couldn't afford, the landlord's last text: "Rent goes up in 2 months. No exceptions." Yeah, he was nervous. Who wouldn't be? But he was also hopeful, dangerously hopeful. Because if you've ever had that one chance dangled in front of you, the one that could maybe, possibly, if the stars lined up just right, change everything, you know what that does to your heart. It makes it fragile and greedy at the same time. He went home that afternoon, picked up Leo from the neighbor who watched him after school, made pasta with jarred sauce, and checked his wallet 3 times just to make sure his Metro card was still there. At the table, Leo swung his legs under the chair, humming. "You're smiling," Leo said suddenly. "I am." Daniel asked. "Yeah, you only smile like that when something good is going to happen. Like when you got extra tables on Valentine's Day." "That's very specific of you," Daniel chuckled. "We might have a special guest tonight at work." "Like a superhero?" Leo asked, eyes bright. Something in Daniel's chest tugged. "Something like that." "You should give him my drawing," Leo said seriously, getting up and running to his backpack. He came back with a crumpled sheet of paper. On it was a slightly lopsided drawing of Daniel carrying a tray, and Leo under it, holding a balloon. "That's you and me," Leo said, "so he knows we're a team." "Maybe I will," Daniel said softly. He folded the drawing carefully, tucked it into his wallet, and kissed his son's forehead before leaving for the evening shift. He had no idea that by the end of that night, his heart would be in pieces, or that the drawing would matter more than he could possibly imagine. The restaurant buzzed in a way it didn't usually buzz on a Tuesday. Carl had polished the wine glasses himself. The hostess had rehearsed her greeting 3 times. The head chef, Marco, had yelled at everyone in the kitchen until even the panhandles looked nervous. "Remember," Carl said, pacing near the entrance, "no one mentions his money. No selfies. No small talk unless he starts it. Professional, polished, perfect. We want him to love this place." "Or buy it," Mia muttered under her breath. At 8:06 p.m., he walked in. Derek Mercer wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a dark sweater, jeans, and an expression that looked more tired than powerful. A man in his late 40s with neatly groomed salt and pepper hair and eyes that scanned the room in a single sharp sweep. He didn't bring a huge entourage. Just one assistant with a tablet and a warm smile. The hostess straightened. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer." Welcome to the Meridian. He nodded once, not unfriendly, just reserved. Thank you. Right this way. Your server will be Daniel. Daniel took a quick breath, smoothed his apron, and walked forward. Good evening, Mr. Mercer, he said. I'm Daniel. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Derek looked at him for a second, and for that second, it felt like being scanned, measured, and filed away. Daniel, he repeated. Nice to meet you. His voice was calm. Not booming, not arrogant. Just calm. They went through the routine. Sparkling or still. Specials of the night. Allergy questions. Wine suggestions. Derek listened, asked a few specific questions about ingredients, and ordered without fuss. No drama. No snapping fingers. No looking past Daniel like he was invisible. If anything, he seemed more observant than most. Is this a good place to work? Derek asked casually as Daniel refilled his water. The question caught him off guard. Yeah, Daniel said quickly. It's busy, but it's good. Derek's eyes lingered on him for a second. Then he nodded and turned back to his assistant. The rest of the meal went smoothly. Food came out perfectly. Derek complimented the chef on the lamb. He nodded when Daniel checked in. No complaints. No sendbacks. No raised voice. But something about him made Daniel feel like he was being watched. Not in a creepy way. More in a this guy sees everything kind of way. And you know what? Daniel didn't have time to overthink it. There were other tables, other guests, other plates to carry and glasses to refill. The restaurant pulsed around him, and he slipped back into the rhythm like a well-practiced dance. Finally, dessert was finished, coffee cups were half empty, and Derek signaled for the check. Daniel printed it, slid it into the black leather folder, and placed it gently on the edge of the table. Whenever you're ready, sir. Thank you, Daniel, Derek said. He opened the folder and pulled out a sleek black card. If Daniel's heart stuttered a little, he pretended it was from all the running. Because this was it. The moment every server dreams about. The check was big. The meal was expensive. Even a standard percentage tip would be huge for him. And if all those stories about Derek were true, it might be life-changing. He walked away, gave them space, pretended not to watch. But of course, he watched. Derek signing. His assistant saying something quietly. Derek pausing, glancing at the bill again. Writing. Finally, Derek put the pen down. Slipped the card and receipt back into the folder. Pushed it to the side. He stood, shook Daniel's hand. Thank you for the service, Derek said. You're very good at what you do. You're welcome, sir, Daniel said, stunned by the compliment. He walked them to the door. The hostess opened it with a smile that looked like it hurt her cheeks. Have a great night, Mr. Mercer, she said. You too, he replied, and then he was gone. Just like that. Daniel exhaled, rolled his shoulders back, and forced himself not to run back to the table. He walked, steady, like he hadn't pinned half his month's survival on the number written on that slip. He reached the table, picked up the leather folder, and opened it, and his world dropped out from under him. Tip, 0.00. Total, identical to the subtotal. Nothing else. No cash. No scribbled sorry, bad service explanation. No, wasn't happy with the food. Just a neat, clear, intentional zero. In that moment, all the stories, all the rumors about his generosity vanished like smoke. Daniel's cheeks burned. He could feel the blood rushing to his ears. His throat tightened. Did I mess up? Did I do something wrong? Was I too slow? Too friendly? Not friendly enough. Behind him, he could feel eyes on his back. Coworkers waiting to hear how it went. Hoping he'd be the lucky one tonight. He suddenly felt sick. He slid the receipt into his apron, ready to shove the disappointment down and move on. It wasn't the first time someone with money had decided that zero was a fair price for his effort. It wouldn't be the last. He reached down to clear the dishes. And that's when he noticed it. The dinner plate, just slightly off-center. Like it had been nudged, not by accident, but with purpose. Something made him lift it. Underneath was a small, neatly folded piece of paper. Not a napkin. Not a random receipt. A deliberate note. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. He looked around. Carl was at the bar, pretending not to stay. Mia was taking an order. The restaurant buzzed on, completely unaware that Daniel's heart had started racing for a different reason now. He slid the note into his apron with the receipt, gathered the dishes, and walked to the kitchen as calmly as he could. It wasn't until he was alone in the small staff hallway by the walk-in freezer that he unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned the first line, and instead of anger, he felt something else. Confusion, shock, and the first chilling hint that something in the Meridian was very, very wrong. The note wasn't long. It was written in black ink, the handwriting sharp and precise. Daniel, I did not leave a tip on this bill, because I already tried to. Check the bottom of the receipt. There's an 18% service charge added. My experience tells me that charge isn't going to you. If I'm wrong, ignore this. If I'm right, call this number. DM. Underneath, there was a phone number. Not a business card. Not a generic hotline. A direct number. Daniel read the note again. And again. There it was, in plain words. I did not leave a tip, because I already tried to. He pulled the receipt back out and looked more carefully. There, at the bottom, in smaller print than everything else, was a line he'd seen many times before but had never really stopped to question. Service charge 18%, already included. Customers asked about it sometimes. Oh, so this is the tip. And they were told, by Carl, by the host, by the little printed brochure at the front, that the policy ensured fair, consistent compensation for our hard-working staff. Except that money never showed up on his pay stub as tips. He thought it was complicated. Taxes, payroll systems. Maybe it was split in some way he didn't understand. But the truth, he hadn't wanted to think too hard about it. Because thinking too hard about unfair things when you feel powerless hurts. Now, under the harsh fluorescent light of the staff hallway, he felt his stomach twist. My experience tells me that charge isn't going to you. What did that even mean? He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, the note in one hand, the receipt in the other. Daniel. Carl's voice snapped down the hallway. Daniel jumped, stuffed the note into his pocket, and scrambled to his feet. Carl appeared at the end of the hall, frowning. Why are you hiding back here? We're still open. You think Billionaire night means you get to take a break? Sorry, Daniel said quickly. I was just... Carl held out his hand. Let me see the receipt. I need to close out his tab. Every muscle in Daniel's body went tense. The receipt. Daniel stalled. Yes, the receipt, Carl said slowly. The thing customers sign. The one with the tip line. He sounded annoyed, but his eyes were sharp, watching. Daniel forced his fingers not to shake as he passed over the signed slip. Carl scanned it, his expression unreadable for a beat. Then one eyebrow rose. No tip, he said, lips curling slightly. Guess even billionaires have bad days. He chuckled. So much for your big break, hey? Daniel swallowed. Yeah, guess so. Carl scribbled something on his clipboard and turned away. If he noticed that the service charge at the bottom of the bill was nearly 3 digits all by itself, he didn't say a word. He just slipped the receipt into the office and shut the door. As the night wore on, Daniel worked like a machine. Table 12 needed their check split. Table 7 wanted extra bread. A couple at Table 3 sent back a dish because the steak wasn't emotional enough, whatever that meant. He moved, smiled, refilled, apologized, repeated. But his mind wasn't on his tables anymore. It was on that note. Those words. That number. And the way Carl's eyes had flicked over the receipt like none of it mattered but the signature. When the restaurant finally closed, he changed out of his uniform, said goodnight to the others, and stepped out into the cold air. He walked to the bus stop, sat on the metal bench, and pulled the note out again under the street lamp. He could throw it away, pretend he never saw it, go home, kiss his son goodnight, and try not to think about how an 18% service charge on a billionaire's bill could have covered a month of inhalers. But he didn't throw it away. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the keypad. You've been in that moment before, right? When you know that making one call, sending one message, asking one question could open a door, or blow up your life. You tell yourself, be grateful. Don't rock the boat. Don't make trouble. And at the same time, another voice whispers, but what if they're stealing from you? What if this isn't just about you? Daniel closed his eyes. He could hear Leo's cough again. See the landlord's text. Feel the weight of all the nights he'd gone home with aching feet and barely enough cash for groceries. He dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone picked up. "This is Mercer," a voice said. And Daniel realized, with a jolt, that he wasn't talking to an assistant. He wasn't talking to a call center. He was talking directly to the billionaire who had just left him a $0 tip. For a moment, Daniel forgot how to speak. He'd expected a receptionist, a recorded line, maybe a lawyer, not the man himself. "Hello?" Derek's voice prompted. "Who is this?" This is Daniel," he managed. "Daniel from the Meridian. The waiter." A pause. "Good," Derek said quietly. "I was hoping you'd call." Those words sent a strange mix of anger and relief through Daniel. "You left me a 0 tip," Daniel blurted out before he could stop himself. "You know that, right?" Derek didn't sound offended. If anything, he sounded sad. "I know how it looks," he said. "And I'm sorry for that. I didn't do it to hurt you, Daniel." "Then why?" Daniel asked, the frustration he'd swallowed all night bubbling up. "Do you have any idea what people here said you'd do? They said you're generous. They said I give big tips and change people's lives." Derek finished calmly. "Well, yeah," Daniel admitted. "And you thought you might be one of those people." The words weren't cruel. They were just true. Daniel let out a shaky breath. "Yeah, I did." He suddenly felt exposed, like this stranger could see every desperate hope he tried to bury. There was a pause on the line. "I can't tell you how many times I've heard that," Derek said quietly. "People looking at me like I'm a walking solution to all their problems. And sometimes I help, when it's right. But tonight I saw something else." "What?" Daniel asked. Derek didn't answer right away. "Tell me something," he said. "Do you get that 18% service charge on your paycheck?" Daniel sank back against the bus stop. The metal felt cold through his jacket. I don't know," he admitted. We have tips on our pay stub, but it's always less than what I actually bring in. I thought it was taxes or something." "Do you see a line that says service charge distribution, or something similar?" Derek pressed. "No," Daniel said. "It just says reported tips." "Do you ever get cash from those charges?" "No." "Have you ever signed paperwork explaining where that service fee goes?" "No. We just got told it was fair compensation." Another silence. "If they were doing this legitimately," Derek said, "they'd be very clear about how that money is split. They'd want you to understand. People hide things they're ashamed of." Daniel stared at the city lights, his heart pounding. "Are you saying they're stealing from us?" he whispered. "I'm saying," Derek replied, "that I've seen this exact pattern before. I've seen restaurants at mandatory service charges tell customers this replaces the tip, and then keep all or most of it for the house or management. It's illegal in a lot of places. It's unethical everywhere." Daniel's first instinct was denial. "I'm sure it's not like that here," he said quickly. The owner's strict, but do you know?" Derek asked gently. "Or do you just hope?" That question cut deeper than any accusation. Did he know? No, he hadn't really wanted to know. Because knowing means you have to decide whether to do something about it. And doing something about it, when you're a single dad 1 paycheck away from disaster, is terrifying. "I can't lose this job," Daniel said hoarsely. "My son." "I know," Derek said. "Believe me, I know what it's like to feel trapped by circumstances. But you called me. That means something, and you already knows that what's happening isn't right." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "What are you even doing in my business?" he asked, the words coming out more defensive than he intended. You're a billionaire. Why do you care what some restaurant does with its service charge?" There was a long exhale on the other end. "Because I was considering investing in the group that owns the Meridian," Derek said. "I've been looking at their financials. Some numbers didn't add up. Tonight, I wanted to see what it looks like from the ground." "The ground?" Daniel repeated. "The people," Derek clarified. The staff. The ones who actually make the experience. People like you. Daniel didn't know what to say. He'd imagined billionaires spending the evenings choosing which island to buy next, not secretly testing service charges at restaurants. So your zero tip was a test? He asked. In a way, Derek said. If I added my own tip on top of an 18% service charge, I'd just be feeding a system I suspect is already exploiting you. I wanted to see if they'd be honest about where that money goes. Some places tell their staff. Some put it in writing. And mine? Daniel asked. I asked your manager earlier, Derek said. He told me, and I quote, "Our staff gets taken care of very well, trust me. That fee keeps everyone happy." I asked if you got a line item breakdown. He laughed. Daniel pictured Carl's face. The dismissive little smike when anyone complained about the schedule. The way he'd rolled his eyes when servers mentioned how high rent had gotten. So what do you want from me? Daniel asked quietly. Why leave me that note? Because you're the one with the power to expose this from the inside, Derek said. I can't walk into your payroll office and demand records, but you can start asking questions. You can compare what's on your receipts with what shows up on your pay stub. You can talk to your coworkers. And if you find proof that they are taking what customers think they are giving you, I'll help you fight it. Fight it how? Daniel asked. With what? I don't have a lawyer. I don't have time to take on a whole company. My foundation has a legal team, Derek replied. We've handled wage theft cases before. If you're being cheated, we'll back you. But you have to decide if you're willing to look. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He thought of Leo again. How excited he'd be about new sneakers. How scared he'd been the last time his chest tightened and they'd rushed to the ER. What if they fire me? Daniel asked. I ask questions. They notice. They get rid of me. Then what? Then they are breaking another law, Derek said. Retaliation is illegal too. But I'm not going to lie to you. There will be risk. There's always risk when you stand up to power. Daniel closed his eyes. He remembered a different time when he'd watched something wrong happen and stayed quiet. Years ago, at another restaurant, he'd seen a coworker get blamed for a mistake the manager made. The coworker had been fired on the spot. He'd had kids too. Daniel had wanted to speak up, but he'd kept his head down. He'd gone home that night and couldn't look at himself in the mirror. Looking back, he thought, that was the moment I learned how to be silent. Now here was another moment. Another fork in the road. Stay silent, or speak. Why me? He asked finally. You could have left that note for anyone. Because you didn't flinch, Derek said simply. All night, I watched how you treated people. You were kind, even when they weren't. You remembered tiny details. You stepped in to quietly help that busboy when he dropped the glasses, instead of embarrassing him. You saw that? Daniel said, startled. I see more than people think, Derek said. And I've learned to recognize certain things in people. Integrity. Courage. You have all three. That means you're already in a war, whether you admit it or not. The only question is which side you're going to fight on. The bus headlights flashed in the distance. Daniel had seconds to decide how honest he wanted to be in this conversation. I'm scared, he whispered. That's good, Derek said. Brave people are almost always scared. The reckless ones are the ones who worry me. The bus pulled up. Daniel stood, gripping the phone in one hand, his backpack strap in the other. What do I do first? He heard himself ask. And that, right there, was the choice that changed everything. The next day, Daniel woke up with a knot in his stomach. For a moment, as the morning light filtered through the thin curtains, his brain tried to pretend nothing had happened. Just another day, another shift, another set of strangers to smile at. Then he saw the folded note on his nightstand. It all came rushing back. The billionaire, the zero tip, the accusation hidden between the lines of that calm, sharp handwriting. He looked over at Leo, who was sitting on the floor, painstakingly trying to fix a broken toy car with tape. Daddy, Leo said without looking up. Can we get pizza on Friday? Tommy's dad gets him pizza on Fridays. Money. Again. It always came back to money. Maybe, Daniel said. We'll see how the week goes, okay? Leo nodded, accepting that as easily as kids accept injustice they don't understand yet. On the bus to Wyke, Daniel pulled up his email and opened his last few pay stubs. He zoomed in on the tips section. The numbers were strange. Some weeks, he did huge nights, birthdays, big parties, holiday rushes. Nights where he knew he'd run hundreds of dollars worth of tips on the card terminal. But the actual reported tips amount on the stub? Lower. A lot lower. He told himself it was taxes. Or card fees. Or some complicated thing it wasn't his place to challenge. But now, with Derek's words echoing in his mind, he counted. He thought of very specific nights. That corporate group of 12 he'd taken care of alone. That one table that left a handwritten note saying "You're amazing" with 25% scribbled on the receipt. This didn't add up. He walked into the Meridian with his heartbeat in his throat. He tied his apron, checked his section, rehearsed his usual smile and the reflection of the metal coffee machine. And then he did something he'd never done before. He went to Mia. "You ever wonder about the service charge?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Mia popped a piece of mint gum into her mouth and raised an eyebrow. "You mean the free money we're supposedly getting from the magical tip fairy?" "I'm serious," Daniel said. "Do you ever see it? Like, actually see it on your paycheck?" She tilted her head, studying him. "Why are you asking?" "Humor me," Daniel said. "Look at your last pay stub on your phone." Mia sighed dramatically, pulled out her phone, and tapped. "Okay," she said. "What am I looking at?" "Tips," Daniel said. "The amount." She read the number, frowned, then looked up. "That seems low," she admitted. "But it's always low, so I stopped thinking about it." "Why?" "Do you remember that party last Saturday?" he asked. "The engagement group. 10 people. They left an extra $200 on top of the service charge." "Yeah," Mia said slowly. "I remember because they made me sing some cheesy song." Daniel nodded. "Do you see that reflected here? Because I don't." She stayed at the screen, scrolling through. "No," she said quietly. "I don't." "Where do you think it went?" Daniel asked. Mia's jaw tightened. "You kidding?" she scoffed. "Probably to Victor's new car." Victor Hale. The owner. He didn't come in often. When he did, he wore expensive watches and cologne that lingered in the air long after he'd left. He shook hands with important people and barely looked at the staff. "Have you ever asked?" Daniel pressed. Mia glanced around as if the walls might be listening. "People who ask too many questions here don't last," she said flatly. "You remember Lewis?" Of course he remembered Lewis. He'd been a server who'd complained that his hours kept mysteriously disappearing from the schedule. 2 weeks later, he was let go for performance reasons. "Maybe that was different," Daniel said. "Maybe if we all—" "Hey." Carl's voice cut across the room. "Morning gossip time is over. We've got a full reservation list. Let's move like we're being paid." Mia rolled her eyes, then gave Daniel a look. Not an angry look, a wary one. "This about bills again?" she asked in a low voice. "Because if you're onto something, don't do it alone." His heart flickered. "You'd back me up?" he asked. "Depends how crazy you plan on being," she shot back. "But yeah, I don't like the idea of someone pocketing money with my name on it." The day went on. Between taking orders and refilling drinks, Daniel started to do something he'd never done before. He took notes. He wrote down the totals of his tables, how much they tipped on the receipt, whether there was a service charge. He checked that 18% line over and over. "Is this the tip?" some customers asked, pointing at it. "Yes," he heard himself say. "That's the standard service charge." He hated how automatic it sounded. How loyal. He wrote down how much he expected to see at the end of the week. He did this for days. At home, after putting Leo to bed, he'd spread the little scraps of paper on the kitchen table and compare them to his digital pay stub. The gap was undeniable. Hundreds, then thousands. Not just from him. If this was happening to every server, every bussier, every runner, the scale of it made him feel sick. On the third night, he called Derek again. "I think you're right," he said without preamble. "The math doesn't match. Not even close." "All right," Derek said calmly. "Then it's time to go a little deeper." "You mean Talk to my coworkers. Yes, Derek said. See if they'll trust you with their numbers. The more data you have, the harder it is for them to claim it's a mistake. What if no one wants to get involved? Daniel asked. Some won't, Derek said. Fear is a powerful muzzle. But you won't be alone. What do you mean? Daniel asked. You'll see, Derek replied. I'm not going to push you. This is to be your choice. But if you decide to move forward, text me. I'll have my team ready. He hung up. Daniel stared at his phone, feeling like he'd stepped onto a path that had no easy way back. He thought about staying out of it, focusing on his tables, hoping for better tips from people who weren't billionaires leaving secret notes. He thought about walking away from the Meridian entirely, finding a job somewhere else, starting over. But here's the thing. When you finally see the shape of your own exploitation, it's very hard to unsee it. Every time he walked past the framed "We value our staff" poster in the hallway, it felt like an insult. Every time a customer said, "Glad they add the tip automatically. Make sure you get taken care of," he wanted to scream. Instead, he took a deep breath. He made a decision. It was time to stop being afraid of his own paycheck. He started with Mia. "Can I show you something?" he asked after the lunch rush, when they had a few minutes before dinner service. They sat at a side table near the back, a place where the cameras didn't reach and the kitchen noise masked their voices. Daniel spread his notes out. "This is from my last 4 shifts," he said. "Look at the totals. Look at how much should be there. Then look at this." He handed her his phone with his digital stub pulled up. Mia frowned, glancing between the two. "You're missing at least, what, $300, she said. "Probably more." "Closer to 5, Daniel said. "And that's just me. That's not counting you, or Lewis before he left, or Rosa, or the runners." Mia leaned back, chewing her gum slowly. "This is theft," she said bluntly. "If a customer left cash on the table and you walked out with it, they fire you on the spot. That's what this is, just with nicer fonts." "Will you let me see your numbers?" Daniel asked. She hesitated. "You're not recording this, are you?" she asked. "No," Daniel said quickly. We need more proof." She searched his face, looking for any sign of betrayal. Finally, she sighed and unlocked her phone. "Fine. But if this blows up and I end up the villain, I'm haunting you." They went through her shifts, her tips, the big nights, her missing money. They rope in Andre, a bussier who always joked about buying his mom a house when the TikTok millions hit. He laughed when they asked at first. "You think I don't know they're skimming?" he said. "I'm not blind. I just figured, what am I going to do? Sue them with my negative bank account?" "Maybe we can," Daniel said, feeling a strange, shaky courage in his chest. "Not alone." Andre looked at him thoughtfully. "You serious?" he asked. "Like, actually serious?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Actually serious." One by one, he approached people he trusted most. Rosa, who had been washing dishes there for 10 years. The hostess, Lena, who always came in with perfectly done makeup and left with aching feet. They were scared. Of course they were scared. What if Victor finds out? Lena whispered. "He has connections. My cousin said he could blacklist us in half the restaurants in the city." "What if we don't do anything?" Daniel counted. How much more are we going to let him take? He didn't have all the answers. He wasn't a lawyer or an activist. He was a tired waiter with a son who thought pizza on Fridays was luxury. But outraged people are contagious. The more he showed the numbers, the more he talked, the more he realized something. He wasn't alone. They'd all felt the wrongness. They'd just trained themselves not to look at it. Now they were looking. And once eyes open, they don't like being shut again. They started to keep records. Quietly, Mia took photos of every big receipt she ran, zooming in on the service charge and the tip line. Andre started snapping screenshots of his weekly schedules when hours mysteriously disappeared. Rosa asked the kitchen staff if anyone had ever received bonus pay from service distributions. No one had. They communicated in whispers, in back rooms, over late-night texts. One evening, after 3 days of collecting, Daniel texted the number from the note. Daniel, I have some data. Not everything, but enough to show something's wrong. Derek, good. Can you talk now? Daniel, not at the restaurant. After my shift. Derek, I'll connect you with someone from my legal team. They'll guide you. That night, when he got home and Leo was in bed, he sat at the kitchen table with the phone on speaker. A calm voice came on. Hi, Daniel. My name is Priya. I work with Mr. Mercer's foundation. He told me a bit about your situation. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, but I'm glad you reached out. Thanks, Daniel said awkwardly. I'm not even sure what to do. That's okay, Priya said. You've already done more than most. What we need now is to document everything as clearly as possible. Receipts, pay stubs, any communication you've had with management about compensation. We've started, he said. I have photos, and others do too, but they're scared. That's understandable, she said. Fear is a rational response when someone holds your livelihood over your head. But there are protections. In many places, it's illegal for employers to retaliate when staff raise concerns about wage theft. Doesn't mean they won't try, Daniel said. No, it doesn't, Priya agreed. But it does mean they'll face consequences if they do. We can help you file complaints with labor authorities. If necessary, we can pursue legal action. But before that, we want to give them a chance to do the right thing. The right thing, Daniel repeated. You think they'll just admit it? People rarely do at first, she said. But there's power in numbers. If we can show this isn't an isolated mistake but a pattern, they'll realize it's not going away quietly. He thought about Carl's smirk, about Victor's luxury cars, about the way customers smiled, believing their automatic tip was making life easier for the staff. It's not just us, Daniel said. It's the customers too. They think they're doing the right thing. I know, Priya said. That's another layer we can address, if and when this goes public. But first, we'll focus on you. They spent an hour going through details. At the end of the call, Daniel felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Not relief. Not exactly. But grounded. Like he wasn't flailing in the dark anymore. He had a direction. The next week, he and his co-workers collected more proof. They compared notes across different months. They found old group chats where people complained about missing money. They found an email from HR that said, in vague, carefully words, that service charges are used to ensure the overall operations and staff environment are maintained. What does that even mean? Mia said, fuming. Are we the environment now? Apparently, Andre snorted. Then something happened that escalated everything. Victor showed up. Victor rarely visited the Meridian in person. He preferred to operate from a distance, sending orders through Carl, appearing at quarterly meetings in expensive suits to talk about performance metrics and brand positioning. But one Friday evening, just before the dinner rush, he walked in. The room seemed to tilt around him. He was in his early 50s, with slick-back hair and a smile that was all teeth. His watch probably cost more than Daniel's yearly rent. He shook hands with a few regulars, waved at the bar, and then motioned to Carl. They disappeared into the office. When they emerged, Carl had the forced, brittle smile of someone pretending nothing was wrong. Everyone, Carl called out, clapping his hands. Quick meeting before we open. The staff gathered again, a mirror of the night Derek had arrived. Victor stood in front of them, hands clasped. I'm proud of what we've built here, he began. The Meridian has become a staple in this city, and that's thanks to all of you. His voice was smooth, practiced. But, he continued, as you know, the market has been challenging. Costs are up. Customers expect more for less. We've had to get creative to keep this place running. Daniel felt a chill. You can always tell when someone is about to justify something ugly by calling it creative. That's why we introduced the service charge, Victor went on. It allows us to maintain high standards, invest in the ambience, and ensure that our team is compensated fairly. Fairly, Mia muttered under her breath. But I've been hearing rumblings, Victor said, his eyes sweeping the room. Some of you are confused about this policy, maybe even upset. His gaze lingered on Daniel for half a second too long. Or maybe Daniel was just paranoid. If you have concerns, Victor said. My door is always open. But understand this, without that charge, we'd have to cut staff or close entirely. This policy keeps your job secure. So before you complain, ask yourself what you'd prefer. A slightly smaller tip pool or no paycheck at all. There it was. The threat, wrapped in corporate language. You complain, you lose everything. Rosa shifted uncomfortably. Andre clicked his tongue softly. So let's keep our focus where it belongs, Victor concluded. On delivering unforgettable experiences for our guests. The rest, leave that to us. He smiled. The kind of smile that said, I own this place. I own this narrative. If you think this is bad, the narrator in your mind might say, wait until you see what happens next. Because Victor, he wasn't just greedy. He was arrogant. And arrogant people make mistakes. That night, Daniel saw something he couldn't ignore. He passed by the office and saw Victor through the glass wall, talking to someone on speakerphone. The door was slightly ajar. Of course we keep the full service charge, Victor was saying. If we gave that to the staff, we'd be broke. They are lucky to have a job. Minimum wage and whatever crumbs people throw on top is more than enough. Carl laughed in the background. Besides, Victor continued, customers like feeling virtuous. They see service included and think they are saving the world. Daniel froze. His heart hammered. This was it. The confirmation. The confession. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and hit record. He shouldn't have been able to hear this. The door shouldn't have been open. The universe shouldn't have lined things up this neatly. But sometimes, when people get too comfortable in their power, they stop hiding their cruelty. They think no one will ever dare use it against them. Victor kept talking. We phrase it like it's for staff, he said casually. But legally, it's ours. We just have to be careful not to put anything too specific in writing. Our lawyer said we're fine as long as we call it operations support. How much does that add up to? The voice on the phone asked. For this location alone. Victor chuckled. 6 figures. Easy. Across the chain. You do the math. Daniel stopped recording. His hands were trembling so hard he nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. This was theft. Systematic, deliberate theft. And now, he had proof. That night, when he got home, he didn't cry. He didn't rage. He sat at the kitchen table long after Leo had fallen asleep, staring at the phone on the table. Then he picked it up and sent the recording to Priya. Daniel, I think I have what you need. She called him within minutes. Daniel, she said, barely containing her urgency. This is huge. This isn't just a mistake. This is an admission of intentional misrepresentation. So what now? He asked. Do we send it to the police? The news? Blast it online? Slow down, she said gently. We move strategically. This is a powerful piece of evidence, but we have to protect you and your co-workers. The goal isn't chaos. It's justice. He let her talk him through the steps. They'd file a formal complaint with labor authorities. They'd prepare a potential civil case. They'd draft a letter to the company demanding restitution and changes. And there's something else you should know, Priya said carefully. Mr. Mercer has changed his plans with the company. What do you mean? Daniel asked. He's decided not only not to invest, she said, but to expose this if they don't fix it. He's arranging a meeting with upper management for next week. He wants you and a few other staff members to be there, if you're willing. Me? Daniel asked, stunned. Why me? Because you're the one who started this, she said, and because it's harder for them to ignore the person actually affected. Fear clawed at his throat again. I'm not a public speaker, he said. I'm just a waiter. You're not just anything, she said firmly. You're a worker whose wages are being stolen. That makes you more qualified to speak than anyone in a suit. He laughed weakly. You sound like you've done this before. I have, she said, and I've seen people like you change entire systems. But I won't lie to you, it will be scary. People you thought you knew may turn on you. Management will try to intimidate you. They might offer hush money. They might smear your name. His stomach flipped. Great pep talk, he muttered. But, she added, you won't be alone. I'll be there. Mr. Mercer will be there. And your co-workers. Some of them will stand beside you. You've already started something. The question is whether you want to see it through. At White, Daniel changed. Not in a dramatic, movie-montage way. Outwardly, he looked the same. Same black apron. Same gentle smile to guests. Same careful balancing of plates. But inside, something had shifted. He wasn't just enduring anymore. He was watching. He noted every time Carl dismissively waved off a question about pay. Every time someone asked if the service charge went to staff, and a lie rolled smoothly off someone's tongue. He stopped laughing at the creative accounting jokes. He started saying things like, "I don't know where that money goes," when customers asked about the service fee. It was a small thing, but it was a crack in the script they'd been forced to follow. Mia noticed. "You're different," she said one night as they folded napkins. "Less bendy." "Bendy," he echoed. "Yeah," she said. "Like, you used to bend around everyone's moods. Now you're standing a little straighter." He almost told her about the recording, about the meeting. Almost. But he didn't want to put a target on her back without her full consent. "Maybe I'm just tired," he said instead. "You've been tired since I met you." She shot back. "This is new." A few days later, he gathered a handful of the most trusted co-workers after close. They sat around a cleared table, the lights dimmed, the restaurant finally quiet. "I need to show you something," he said. He played the recording. Victor's voice filled the room like a ghost. "Of course we keep the full service charge. They are lucky to have a job. They think we're saving the world." When it ended, the silence was heavy. Rosa was the first to speak. "He said that," she whispered. "About us." "He did," Daniel said quietly, "and is not worried about saying it. That's how sure he is that we won't do anything." Andre's hands were balled into fists. "I knew he was stealing," he hissed. "I knew it. But hearing it—" Lena looked pale. "What happens if this gets out?" she asked. "Will the customers hate us too? Will we be the villains?" "We're not the villains," Daniel said firmly. "We're the ones being lied to. They're the ones lying." Mia leaned forward, eyes burning. "So what's the plan, Daniel?" she asked. "Because I'm tired of playing nice in a rigged game." He took a breath. "There's going to be a meeting next week," he said, "with corporate, and with Derek Mercer." Their eyes widened. "The billionaire," Andre said. "You spoke to him again?" "He's helping," Daniel said simply. "His team is building a case. They want some of us there when they confront Victor." "Confront how?" Lena asked weakly. "With evidence," Daniel said. "With recordings. With numbers. With the truth." Rosa crossed herself. "This is dangerous," she murmured. "But it is right." "Is anyone actually with me?" Daniel asked, looking around. "Because I'm going no matter what. But going alone is stupid," Mia finished. "Which is why you're not doing it." She raised her hand. "I'm in." Andre raised his too. "Same. I'd like my stolen wages back, thanks." Rosa hesitated, then lifted her hand slowly. "If I lose this job, I don't know what I'll do," she said. "But I'm more afraid of looking in the mirror and seeing a coward." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I'll come," she whispered. "I'm tired of telling people that fee helps us when it doesn't." Daniel felt his throat tighten. In that small circle, under flickering overhead lights, a group of tired workers quietly transformed into a team. This is the moment, the narrator in you might say, when they stopped being victims and started being strategists. The meeting was scheduled for the following Wednesday afternoon, before the restaurant opened. Corporate executives were flying in. Victor would be there. So would a representative from the Labor Department, thanks to Priya's fast work. And Derek. Daniel almost didn't sleep the night before. He lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of traffic, and Leo's soft breathing. Part of him wanted to run, to call and say he was sick, to disappear into another job at another restaurant where he could pretend he didn't know how ugly things could be. But every time that idea flickered, he saw the numbers again, the missing money, the arrogance in Victor's voice. He also saw something else, the way his co-workers' faces had lit up when they realized they weren't crazy, that the wrongness they felt was real, the way their backs had straightened when they said, I'm in. He thought of Leo's drawing in his wallet. He got up, pulled it out, and smoothed the creases. A tiny version of him, a tiny version of his son, both smiling under a tray of food. We're a team, Leo had said. Yeah, Daniel whispered to the paper. We are. The next day, he dressed slowly. Not in his uniform. In his one good shirt. The one he wore to court when he got custody of Leo. The one that still smelled faintly of that terrifying, triumphant day. He kissed Leo's forehead as he headed out. You working? Leo mumbled sleepily. Kind of, Daniel said. I'm going to try to make things better at work. Okay, Leo murmured. Love you, Daddy. I love you too, buddy. At the Meridian, the atmosphere was strange. No clatter of dishes. No music. Just the quiet murmur of voices in the private dining room, where a long table had been set up. At one end sat Victor and Carl, flanked by two corporate executives in matching suits. At the other end sat Derek, in another simple sweater, and Priya beside him, a folder of documents in front of her. In the middle, almost like a bridge between the two worlds, were a few empty chairs. For staff, Priya had told Daniel, if you're still willing. He was. Mia, Andre, Rosa, and Lena joined him. When they walked in, Victor's expression flickered. Why are they here? He demanded. They're here because this is about them, Priya said evenly. It's their wages we're discussing. Victor laughed. Since when do we run payroll by committee? This is ridiculous. Wage theft investigations are rarely convenient, Derek said quietly, but they are necessary. Watching it in person, you would have seen the clash instantly. On one side, wealth, power, control, people who were used to setting the rules. On the other, a billionaire who decided to use his power differently, and a handful of ordinary workers who decided to stop being silent. If you were sitting by the door, you might have felt the air thicken. Let's be clear about why we're here, one of the corporate executives said briskly. Mr. Mercer has raised concerns about our compensation practices. We're confident this is a misunderstanding that we can clear up quickly. Great, Priya said, opening her folder. Let's start with the service charge. She slid a printed bill onto the table. It was Derek's receipt. Here we have an 18% service charge, she said. Now, according to your marketing materials, this is framed as a way to ensure fair, consistent compensation for staff. Correct? That's one way of putting it, Victor said coolly. It's also there to keep the lights on. Then where, Priya asked, is the line in staff pay stubs showing the distribution of that charge to them? The executives exchanged a glance. Our payroll system consolidates certain items, one said. It may not appear as a separate line item, but rest assured, our staff are compensated fairly. She slid another paper across the table. This is Mr. Reyes's pay stub from the week he served Mr. Mercer, she said. We've calculated the expected tips based on receipts we've collected, minus the service charge. The difference is significant. Victor waved a hand dismissively. Staff don't understand how taxes and processing fees work, he said. We've explained this. The service charge helps cover back-of-house wages, maintenance. But you've told customers it's for staff tips, Derek cut in. That's what matters. Victor's jaw tightened. We've said it supports operations and staff, he corrected. It's not our fault if people choose to interpret it differently. Do you deny, Priya asked, that you've been representing this fee to customers as a way to ensure servers get their tips? No, Victor said. We've said it helps with staff compensation, which it does. They have jobs, don't they? Across the table, Daniel felt something in him snap. He raised his head. Jobs that we're being underpaid for, he said, his voice shaking but clear. Victor turned on him. Excuse me, he said sharply. We're the ones running your tables, Daniel said. We're the ones smiling when people are rude, staying late, covering shifts. People leave that service charge thinking it's for us. And it's not. It's for your operations. Your words. You don't understand business, Victor said coolly. If we didn't have that charge, we'd close. Do you want that? To put everyone here unemployed because you got greedy for a few extra dollars? Mia bristled beside Daniel. This isn't greed, she snapped. This is us asking for money people already thought they gave us. Enough, one of the executives said sternly. Let's keep this civil. Civil? Andre burst out. Where was civil when you pocketed my mom's rent money every time someone tipped on a birthday party? Priya lifted a hand gently. Let's stay focused, she said. Mr. Hale, in addition to the math not adding up, we have something else. She pressed a button on her laptop. Victor's voice filled the room. Of course we keep the full service charge. If we gave that to the staff, we'd be broke. They're lucky to have a job. His own words played back at him, every arrogant syllable echoing off the polished walls. The executives went pale. Carl shifted in his seat, sweating. Victor's face darkened. Where did you get that? He demanded. Does it matter? Derek asked softly. Is it inaccurate? That was a private conversation, Victor snapped. Recorded without consent. It's inadmissible. Maybe in some contexts, Priya said. But labor investigators tend to be very interested when an employer openly admits to misleading both staff and customers about pay. The labor representative, who had been quiet until now, cleared their throat. They're right, they said. At minimum, this raises serious concerns under wage theft and deceptive business practice statutes. We will be opening a formal investigation. Victor's eyes flashed. This is outrageous, he said. You're taking the word of a few disgruntled employees and a billionaire with a savior complex over a business owner who's kept this place running for a decade. Daniel felt all eyes turned to him. If I may, he said, surprised by his own steadiness, I'd like to say something. The executive nodded, perhaps out of habit more than permission. Daniel stood. Standing up at your own job, in front of your boss, in front of people who could decide your future, is a different kind of terrifying than anything else. But his voice didn't crack. You keep talking about this place, he said, looking at Victor, about how hard it is to run it, about costs, about challenges. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure it's not easy. He paused. But here's what's also true. When I stayed extra hours to cover another server, I wasn't doing it for the ambience. When Rosa washed dishes until her hands bled, she wasn't doing it for the brand. When Mia stayed calm when a table insulted her, she wasn't thinking about operations. We do this because it's our job, because we need to pay rent and buy food and, in my case, asthma medicine for my kid. He exhaled. Customers come here and see your menu and your decor, and they think, wow, what a great restaurant Victor has built. But we're the ones who make them feel welcome. We're the ones they remember. And when they pay that service charge, they look us in the eye and say, glad you're taken care of. He looked at the executives, then at the labor rep. And we're not, he said softly. We're not taken care of. We're taken advantage of. Victor scoffed. Oh, spare me the speech, he sneered. You think you're some kind of hero now. You're a waiter, Daniel. There are 100 more like you who'd take your place tomorrow. The words were meant to crush. Instead, they revealed everything. That's it, isn't it? Derek said quietly, looking at Victor. You think everyone is replaceable. You think fear will keep them quiet forever. But you forgot something. He gestured to Daniel and the others. People like this are the reason places like yours succeed, he said. And when you push them too far, they won't just quit. They'll fight. If you wanted to play savior, Mercer, you could have just left a big tip and walked out a hero, Victor spat. Why stir all this up? Because I'm tired, Derek said, and for the first time, there was a sharpness in his voice. I'm tired of seeing people at the bottom squeezed while people at the top congratulate themselves on their creativity. I've made mistakes in my career. I've been ruthless when I didn't have to be. I can't fix the whole world, but when something like this comes across my table, literally, I'm not going to pretend I didn't see it. He leaned forward. You lied to me, he said. You lied to your customers. And you stole from your staff. Now you have a choice. You can cooperate, repay what you owe, change your practices, and maybe salvage some of your reputation. Or you can fight this in court and in the press. But either way, this isn't staying buried. The room was silent. You could almost feel the shift, the power sliding, just a little, toward the people who'd never had it. The labor rep cleared their throat again. Given the evidence presented, they said formally, I strongly advise you to cooperate, Mr. Hale. Wage theft cases of this magnitude rarely end well for employers. Victor's shoulders slumped, just a fraction. For the first time, he looked less like the untouchable owner and more like a man who realized his castle had cracks. This isn't over, he muttered. No, Daniel said quietly. It's just beginning. News travels fast in a restaurant. By the time the meeting ended, everyone in the Meridian knew something big had happened, even if they didn't know all the details. The official fallout didn't happen overnight. Real life isn't a movie. There weren't instant fireworks or dramatic public arrests. But slowly, steadily, things changed. Within a week, an announcement went out to all staff. Effective immediately, the Meridian Group will be suspending the service charge at all locations while we review compensation policies. A few days later, staff will receive a retroactive payment for past service charges as part of an internal adjustment. When the amounts hit their accounts, people stared at their banking apps in disbelief. Mia texted a screenshot to Daniel. Mia, I almost dropped my phone in the sink. Mia, they actually paid. Daniel, how much? Mia, enough that I'm taking my little sister on a trip for the first time in our lives. Enough that I'm not overdrafting this month. Mia, we did this. Andre got a deposit too. Bro, he said, catching Daniel in the hallway, eyes wide. My mom cried when she saw the number. She thought it was a scam. Rosa held up her pay stub with shaking hands. For 10 years I washed plates while they stole from me, she said. I will never let anyone do that to my children. Customers started to hear about it too. It started with whispers on review sites, then grew when a local journalist ran a story about hidden wage theft in high-end restaurants, featuring the Meridian as a case study. The article didn't mention Daniel by name. It didn't have to. Among the staff, they knew who'd lit the match. Victor. He didn't escape untouched. Labor authorities fined the company heavily. They demanded a full audit across all locations. Several of his creative policies were deemed illegal. Investors pressured him to step down from day-to-day operations. Behind closed doors, he negotiated. He tried to spin. He called the staff ungrateful, troublemakers. But the recording existed. The numbers existed. The court of public opinion had heard enough. Carl silently disappeared from the schedule, his name removed from the management plaque by the door. One day he was there, barking orders. The next, his locker was empty. No tears were shed. In his place, interim managers were brought in. They'd been warned. This staff was no longer afraid to ask questions. As for Derek, he followed through too. He publicly declined any investment in the Meridian Group, instead announcing a new initiative through his foundation. A program to support workers exposing wage theft and unfair labor practices in the service industry. People online called it performative. Some said he was only doing it for PR. Maybe both were true. Maybe neither. But for Daniel and his co-workers, his actions had been more than a headline. He'd listened. He'd believed them. He'd put his money and influence where his mouth was. And that mattered. A year later, the restaurant didn't look all that different from the outside. The sign still said the Meridian. The lights still glowed warm in the evening. Couples still took pictures of their plates before eating. But inside, everything had changed. Tips were tips now. No hidden service charge. No vague operations fee. Just a line on the receipt that said, clearly, gratuity, optional. Next to the host stand, there was a small sign. 100% of tips left by customers go directly to staff. Ask us about our compensation policy. Daniel had written the tagline. He still worked there, but not as a server. 6 months after the confrontation, the company, under pressure from investors and regulators, created a staff advisory committee to ensure transparency in pay and policies. They asked Daniel to be part of it. Then, after watching him calmly and clearly explain things in meeting after meeting, someone suggested something wild. You should be our staff liaison, the regional director said. Officially, we need someone who actually listens. He'd laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. The job paid better than serving. The hours were more regular. It meant fewer late nights and more time helping Leo with homework. He took it. Now he split his time between locations, checking in with staff, explaining policies, helping resolve conflicts before they exploded. He wasn't perfect. He still made mistakes. But he never forgot what it felt like to be in an apron with a manager's smite cutting into his self-worth. He made sure no one under him felt that way without a fight. And Derek, they stayed in touch, oddly enough. Not as friends, exactly. There was too much of a gap in their worlds for easy friendship. But Derek would message sometimes, asking, "How's the team?" "Oh, we just started a case in another city. Any advice for our staff there?" Sometimes, he'd ask about Leo. One afternoon, out of the blue, he invited Daniel and his son to a small event at his foundation. They went. Leo wore his best shirt. He stared up at the skyscrapers with wide eyes, clutching Daniel's hand. Derek knelt down to Leo's level. "You know your dad's a brave man, right?" he said. Leo nodded solemnly. "I know. He fought the bad guys at work." Derek smiled. "He did," he said. "And he inspired us to help a lot of other people too." Then he handed Daniel an envelope. Inside was a letter. "The Mercer Foundation is proud to award you a scholarship for a 2-year program in hospitality management and business ethics." Daniel read it twice before it sank in. He looked up, stunned. "I can't," he started. I didn't finish college. I'm not." "That's why it's a program, not a trophy," Derek said. "You've already proven you understand what good leadership looks like. This just gives you tools to do more of it." At home that night, Leo taped the letter next to his drawing on the wall. "Now it's official," he said. "You're like a superhero at work." "Superheroes don't cry doing homework," Daniel muttered, thinking about going back to school. But he smiled. Because here's the thing. The note under the plate hadn't fixed everything. Not all restaurants changed. Not all bosses got caught. There were still people being underpaid, overworked, exploited. But in their little corner of the world, things were better. And better matters. Mia eventually left the Meridian, not in anger, but in triumph. She used her back pay and some savings to open a small cafe with her cousin. The sign on the wall said, "No hidden fees. No hidden agendas." Andre started a small YouTube channel talking about workers' rights in the service industry. It wasn't big. Not yet. But sometimes, one of his videos would get a comment like, "I thought I was crazy until I saw this. Thank you." And Rosa, she stayed, by choice. Not because she had no other options, but because she wanted to see this new version of the Meridian through. "I watched them steal from us," she said. "Now I will watch them pay us." The only person whose future wasn't locked in a storybook happy ending was Victor. Last anyone heard, he was consulting to other businesses, avoiding interviews, and very careful about what he said on calls. He hadn't gone to jail. In real life, people like him rarely do. But he had lost something that mattered to him, his untouchable image. Every Google search of his name showed articles about the service charge scandal. Job offers dried up. Investors hesitated. That's its own kind of sentence. So what's the real story, hey? On the surface, it looks simple. A billionaire leaves a $0 tip. A waiter finds a note. Corruption is exposed. Justice is served. But if you look deeper, you'll see something more important. You'll see a quiet, exhausted man who had every reason to stay silent, choosing not to. You'll see a group of workers who'd been trained to believe they were powerless, realizing they weren't. You'll see how easy it is for people in power to twist language, to hide theft behind words like operations and policy. And you'll see how one small act, one folded piece of paper under a plate, can be enough to start a chain reaction. If you've ever worked a job where your paycheck didn't match your effort, you know how this feels. If you've ever had a boss make you feel lucky to be exploited, you know the anger that sits in your chest. If you've ever convinced yourself to stay quiet because you're afraid of what speaking up might cost you, you know Daniel. And here's the truth. Speaking up is risky. It doesn't always end with back pay and scholarships and public apologies. Sometimes people do lose their jobs. Sometimes systems fight back hard. But if no one ever speaks, nothing ever changes. And sometimes, the universe sends you an unexpected ally. Not a perfect person. Not a savior. Just someone with power who chooses to use it differently. If you've ever felt small in the face of something unfair, I want you to remember this. You are not just anything. Not just a waiter. Not just a student. Not just a cashier. Or just a cleaner. Or just the one person who sees what's really going on. You see more than you think. You matter more than they want you to believe. And if you're watching this thinking, I've been there. I've swallowed that unfairness and told myself it was normal. Know this. You're not alone. There are people and organizations out there who can help. There are laws that exist to protect you, even if they are not always enforced the way they should be. There are others like you, waiting for someone to say, no, this isn't okay. Sometimes that someone might be you. If you believe integrity matters more than greed. If you believe people shouldn't have to choose between silence and survival. If you've ever felt that tight knot in your stomach when something at work just felt wrong, then this story is for you. And if you've ever left a tip or eaten at a place with a service charge and assumed everything was fair, maybe this is a reminder to ask questions, to read the fine print, to remember there are real people behind the bill you fold and walk away from. Because for Daniel, that $0 tip wasn't an insult. It was a spotlight. It was someone saying, I see you, and I see what they are doing to you. And when he found that note under the plate, he didn't know it yet, but that was the day his life started to change. If this story hit you in any way, if it reminded you of a job you hated, a boss who went too far, or a moment when you wished someone would stand beside you, share it. Drop a comment about your own experience. You never know who might read it and realize they are not crazy, not overreacting, not alone. And if you want more stories like this, about ordinary people, hidden injustices, and the quiet kind of courage that changes things, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the biggest revolutions don't start with grand speeches. Sometimes, they start with a $0 tip and a hidden note under a plate.